Finally got a new Star Wars game, and Jedi Fallen Order is a game that I've been cautiously looking forward to. Quick note, this review might have some slight story spoilers. I'm leaving all the major stuff out because there are a lot of potential story spoilers in this game. Let me start off by saying that I understand there's a huge negative perception of EA in the gaming community. Understandably so. They haven't really treated the Star Wars license with the respect it deserves. But please do not let that keep you from playing Fallen Order. What Respawn has created here is one of the greatest Star Wars games I have ever played. And easily, without a shadow of a doubt, it's a contender for my game of the year. Seriously, it's that good. It's the first time I felt that EA's done something truly special with the license. Fallen Order is a game that fits beautifully within Star Wars lore, and it pays respect to the series. It's clear that the people at Respawn that actually created the game made it a passion project. And while anyone could really enjoy it, the ones that will get the most out of it are the big Star Wars fans that know all the deep lore. Story-wise, Fallen Order takes place 5 years after Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, in the time period before Episode 4 and A New Hope. The Jedi were betrayed and mostly exterminated by the same troops they served with during the Clone Wars, and the few survivors are on the run and in hiding from the Empire. So it's a really dark time period. The Empire is in full control of the galaxy, Luke Skywalker is just a child on Tatooine, and the Rebel Alliance is still being formed. You play as Cal Kestis, a young Padawan that survived the Jedi Purge and saw his own master die in front of him. He's working a regular job, trying to fit in secretly, and then an accident leaves him no choice but to use the Force. So the Empire picks up on this and starts hunting him down. And that's just the beginning of the story. Along the way, he runs into different allies, some of them that you've seen appear in the movies, some of them original, and he unravels the secrets of an ancient Force-wielding civilization that may hold the key to rebuilding the Jedi Order. There's so many twists and turns the plot takes that I'm going to leave any more story details out of it. It's something that really should be experienced. It's all part of the journey. But you can have the best story in the world, and it could be completely meaningless without interesting characters to supplement it. And the ones you meet along the way have their own history with the Jedi. Sometimes I would just sit there and have optional conversations about them, just to learn as much as I can about the character. I had a really hard time putting this game down once I started playing. I'm still struggling with that. The further I get into it, the more I want to know what's going to happen next, or what planet I have to visit next. And as someone familiar with the overall lore of Star Wars, there was so much fan service to be found here. Placing the game in this era puts it in the time period when the Empire was still fairly new, and the repercussions of the Clone Wars are still semi-fresh. You could be in a location and find the remains of an old Republic gunship, random clone trooper bodies scattered around, helmets, piles of dismantled battle droids. Near the beginning, there's this really impressive shot that I couldn't take my eyes off of, where you get a glimpse of a huge Trade Federation ship being lowered in order for the Empire to rip it apart and repurpose it for Imperial ships. It looks amazing.
Will you look at that? A Separatist ship. I haven't seen a Luke or Hulk in ages.
Yeah. Ages.
Breaking her will be big money. All right, let's go.
And you'll really get a kick out of this game if you're a fan of the Clone Wars animated series specifically, since it has plenty of elements that were directly introduced in that show. Clone Wars had a whole story arc about the planet Dathomir and 4 sensitive witches called Night Sisters. That's one of the planets you visit in this game, and the Night Sisters play a vital role in the story. Saw Gerrera, which many fans identify with Rogue One, was actually from the Clone Wars animated series originally, trained by Anakin Skywalker to defend his own homeworld. So it's definitely worth checking out that show. It helps you appreciate some of the details put into this game's lore, and it's also a great animated series. Fallen Order also pulls from the good aspects of Disney's version of Star Wars. It's no surprise to anyone on this channel that I generally dislike the direction that Disney's taken with Star Wars in many cases, but I do give them some credit for some of the really cool additions to the lore at the same time. One of them being the Sith Inquisitors. Sure, the expanded universe had something similar, but the Inquisitors are a branch of the Empire, specifically specifically dedicated to hunting down remaining Jedi and filled with secrets of their own. But the most important character in the story, of course, is the player character, Cal. He's an original creation for this game, and a welcome addition to the Star Wars universe. It was a great choice putting the story's perspective from the point of view of a young Jedi that survived Order 66. It really gives you an insight into how tragic that event was. Cal's just filled with guilt over not being strong enough to save his master when the clone troopers turned on the Jedi.
I couldn't save him.
Cal, you were only a child.
No, I know I could have helped him if I'd been stronger and braver, if I would have listened to him. I could have helped him. I know it.
And Fallen Order shows how traumatic of an experience it would have been for a Jedi that was just a child at the time, that has no clue why his troops and his friends were suddenly trying to kill him. When you do get to experience Order 66 during flashbacks, it's pretty heart-wrenching, knowing what's about to happen, and they put you in control of a young Cal where you can walk around and interact with these troops, and they talk to him like they're buddy-buddy, and you even give one of them high five. These interactions really show how close-knit the troops were with their Jedi generals and their Padawans. So when they raised their weapons against them just moments later, it's truly hard to watch, and it left me feeling uneasy.
You're in a rush.
Master T'Pol's called me for training.
You got this, kid. You know, Jaro isn't known for his patience.
And that's exactly the kind of feeling a depiction of Order 66 should invoke, being done in such a dramatic fashion. Cal's journey takes him from being a young Jedi that hasn't used the Force in a long time, to a skilled Jedi Knight in tune with the Force, and this reflects in the gameplay. You feel like a Jedi training growing stronger throughout the journey, and this is where I'm going to say that this game may not be for everyone, depending on the difficulty level you choose. Sure, you could pick the easiest mode, but there's 4 different difficulties to choose from. I chose the hardest one, as I usually do, and I found it incredibly satisfying. But warning, you will die over and over as you learn. At the beginning of the game, you feel almost helpless at times, with even basic enemies killing you in 1 or 2 hits, and you have no real force powers to defend yourself with. And I have to say, this is the greatest lightsaber combat in any Star Wars game ever. Button mashing does not work in this game. If you button mash, you will die. It requires skill, quick reaction time, and at the same time, patience. You have to learn when to dodge enemies' attacks, when the right time for you to block is, and when the best time for you to strike is. You have to constantly think before you attack, especially during boss battles. I can see easily frustrated players being turned off by this, but if you stick with it and you struggle through the game, you gain skill points to increase your health, your force powers, unlock new moves, combos, and during flashback sequences during Cal's Jedi training, he remembers different force abilities required to progress in the game.
Try again.
It's difficult, Master.
Yes, the path is difficult. It may seem impossible, but with persistence and the Force as your ally, you will overcome any obstacle. You will master any path. Now, do what you must to reach me.
I did it. Persistence and the Force as my ally.
And his droid, BD-1, also gets upgrades to access new places. If you successfully learn how to be good at the game, by the end, you're an insanely powerful Jedi killing machine. Although you do still need to play smart versus aggressively attacking everything.
Get up there! We'll survive much longer! Don't regret that! Turning Jedi!
One of my favorite things in video games is customization, and you can find all sorts of different items hidden throughout the game that unlock different colors to your ship, different uniforms, and you also get really cool lightsaber pieces. It's so cool being able to switch all the lightsaber parts to make your blade look unique. Sure, other games like Force Unleashed, you've been able to change the crystal to make the blade look differently, or to make the color of the blade look differently. Here, this is just truly customizable, part by part. And about halfway through the game, you find even more customization options for it. So now I have this beautiful purple blade with a shiny blue handle that I put together myself. It's awesome. And as far as the lightsaber, you can use it as a traditional single blade, or the Darth Maul style double blade with the one press of the D-pad. The double blade is great for groups of enemies too, by the way. And later you can break your lightsaber apart into 2 separate blades to attack. Again, the lightsaber combat is at its best in Fallen Order. There's a huge misconception before this game came out that it was going to be similar to Force Unleashed. It's actually very different. It might have some elements from Force Unleashed in terms of combat, but that's about it. Instead, what we find here is inspiration from different games meshed together. Instead of levels, it's semi-open world. You can go into your ship and zip around the galaxy to different planets, Mass Effect style, and access new areas at different times, like in the Metroid series. Even the map system feels like it was pulled directly from Metroid Prime. There's also Zelda-style dungeons complete with puzzles to solve. To me, this was the biggest surprise since I had no idea it would be this type of game. It's more exploration-based primarily with combat intertwined. Almost secondary, but still a very important factor. There's battles with enormous bosses that require you to learn their patterns and react accordingly, sometimes ending with these huge cinematic events. Very reminiscent of God of War.
We're gonna die! No!
Although Fallen Order does pull ideas from various other games, that's still not a bad thing because it feels very much like its own experience with a personality of its own, instead of a carbon copy of anything else. I have heard many reports that this game is fairly short, clocking in at 15 to 20 hours. I would have to say that's a little deceptive, maybe if you played on the easiest difficulty and just blew through the campaign. But if you play this game as intended, it's a much longer, deeper experience. Just to give you some insight, I haven't completed the main campaign yet. I usually like to beat full games before I actually review them, but in this case, I don't want to beat it yet. I want to go back and search every nook and cranny to get all the upgrades I can. I want BD1 to search all the unexplored areas and scan lore so I can dive into and read every piece of information. The game encourages you to explore and take your time with it, but I did spend more than enough time to give it a fair review. As of right now, I'm about 3/4 of the way into the main story and have spent 21 hours playing it, so calling it a short game is just not very accurate. As much as I love this game, even the best games have some flaws, and there's no exception here. One aspect I thought should have been toned down a little are the sliding sections. At first I was like, whoa, this is really awesome, but the game does it a little too much, to the point where near the end I was more like, oh, here we go again. And secondly, as I stated before, you die over and over at times when you're still early in your powers, and it felt like I spent a lot of time in the loading screen. I'm playing on an Xbox One X, and the loading times feel a little bit too long. It was actually kind of annoying at times. And one last thing is respawning enemies. While I don't think that respawning enemies is necessarily a bad thing, and it's actually quite necessary in this case, so you're not just exploring empty spaces after you kill everybody, but sometimes it's a little much. If you rest at a save point and regain your health, that causes all the enemies you killed to respawn. So I can spend time killing all these enemies in an area, and after the fight, go to the save point in that same room just to recover, and all the enemies I just killed 2 inches away, they're all instantly back again. I felt like it would have been a much better idea if they respawn naturally after a certain amount of time, versus when you go to save seconds just after you killed all of them. This caused a ton of headache for me when I was simply trying to get from point A to point B with a decent amount of health. But in all reality, these are small inconveniences in context of the entire game. You know, I find it really ironic that EA themselves stated that single-player games are dead. And here there's a game with the EA stamp on it that's one of the best games of 2019, and it happens to be 100% single player. I'm absolutely hooked to this game. I cannot recommend it enough. If this is a sign of things to come with future Star Wars games, Star Wars is on the right track again. If you are interested in buying the game, as always, I do have an Amazon link in my description. You get the game, I get a small cut, and I don't think you'll regret the purchase. If you enjoyed this review, leave me a like, and make sure you drop a comment down below, letting me know what your favorite Star Wars game is of all time. And what kind of Star Wars games do you want in the future of EA Star Wars? I'm still waiting on a sequel to Republic Commando, so I'm hoping that they revive it, and I think Respawn is going to be the perfect studio to handle it. As far as I'm concerned, they've more than proven that they're ready to handle the Star Wars license. So EA, let Respawn do Republic Commando 2. Actually, Imperial Commando. Call it Imperial Commando. But that's all I have for you today. Stay tuned for a review for The Mandalorian. I will be reviewing that this weekend. Chapter 3. I'll catch you guys later. Since you made it to the end of this video, I assume you enjoyed it, so why don't you go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any new content. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, links in the description below, and if you'd like to support the channel, you can join my Patreon or become a channel member. This is Fabian, I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.